All right, I'm going to read you this funny story about Thomas's snowsuit. A snowsuit is where you have your jacket and your snow pants are all hooked together. It's by Robert Munch, and the pictures and stuff were done by Michael Marchenko or something like that. All right, Thomas's snowsuit. One day, Thomas's mother bought him a nice new brown snowsuit. When Thomas saw the snowsuit, he said, "That is the ugliest thing I have ever seen in my whole life. If you think I'm going to wear that ugly snowsuit, you are crazy." Thomas's mom said, "Well, we will see about that." Was that very nice the way he was acting if someone bought him something? I don't think so. The next day, when it was time to go to school, his mom said, "Thomas, please put on your snowsuit." And Thomas said, "No!" His mother jumped up and down and said, "Thomas, put on your snowsuit." And Thomas said, "No!" So Thomas's mother picked up Thomas in one hand and picked up the snowsuit in the other hand, and she tried to stick them together. They had an enormous tussle, and when it was done, Thomas was in his snowsuit. Yep, moms and dads usually get their way when they want us to do something. Thomas went off to school and hung up his snowsuit. When it was time to go outside, all the other kids jumped into their snowsuits and ran out the door. See, here they are. They're all ready and run out the door. But not Thomas. The teacher looked at Thomas and said, "Thomas, please put on your snowsuit." Thomas said, "No!" The teacher jumped up and down and said, "Thomas, put on the snowsuit." And Thomas said, "No!" So the teacher picked up Thomas in one hand and picked up the snowsuit in the other hand, and she tried to stick them together. They had an enormous wrestle, and when they were done, the teacher was wearing Thomas's snowsuit, and Thomas was wearing the teacher's dress. Oh my goodness, isn't that silly? When the teacher saw what she was wearing, she picked up Thomas in one hand and tried to get him back into his snowsuit. When they were done, the snowsuit and the dress were tied into a big knot. See it on the floor? And Thomas and the teacher were in their underclothes. She's got her slip on and he's got his t-shirt on. Just then, the door opened and in walked the principal. The teacher said, "It's Thomas. He won't put on his snowsuit." The principal gave Thomas his very best principal look and said, "Thomas, put on your snowsuit." And Thomas said, "No!" So the principal picked up Thomas in one hand, picked up the teacher in the other hand, and tried to get them back into their clothes. And when he was done, the principal was wearing the teacher's dress, Thomas was in his underclothes, and the teacher was in the principal's clothes. Then, from far out in the playground, someone yelled, "Thomas, come out and play!" Thomas ran across the room, jumped into his snowsuit, got in his boots, and in 2 seconds ran out the door. The principal looked at the teacher and said, "Hey, you take off my suit. Take it off right now." And the teacher said, "Oh no, you have on my dress. You take off my dress first." Well, they argued, and neither one wanted to change first. Finally, Thomas came in from recess. He looked up at the principal, he looked at the teacher. He picked up the principal in one hand, picked up the teacher in the other hand. They had an enormous wrestle and tussle, and Thomas got everybody back into their own clothes. The next day, the principal retired and moved to Arizona, where nobody wears snowsuits. The end. So that's a silly story. When you're told to put on your snowsuit, do you put on your snow pants and your snow clothes to go outside? The less time we waste The less time that we waste arguing, the faster we can get it done. And that's what Thomas should have done in the first place, isn't it? I hope you had fun with this funny story. What was your funniest part? You can tell me down below.